Yesterday, the Arizona Senate passed the HCR 2060, which now it goes to the House with the revised 2060. If it passes in the House, it goes to the ballot. Voters will have an opportunity to vote on whether or not local law enforcement can enforce immigration laws within certain parameters. And we'll see if this passes or it doesn't, but it's been very controversial to some. Joining us now to talk about the final bill and what it actually looks like, this HCR 2060, is the Senate President Warren Petersen. Senator Petersen, welcome back.
Good morning, Mike.
So let's talk about the differences here. You know, there was one Republican holdout in Senator Bennett. He spoke about what his reasons were and why he voted yes yesterday on our afternoon show. But can you explain the changes that were made and what the voters will actually be voting on? What is really in this legislation or in this HCR?
Sure, Mike. And it was really a clarification. We had that senator, but we actually had a couple, too, that weren't as vocal, that were concerned that the bill did exactly what it was saying it did. And then also we had the narrative by the media and some of the opposition. I think the opposition is actually a very, very small number. But we simply clarified that it's prospective. It doesn't affect anyone currently here. And, you know, one of the big things that was brought up, the big discussion has been about lawful presence. This doesn't have to do with lawful presence. So it's not an immigration bill. It's a border security bill. It is law enforcement preventing crossings at the border is what this is really about. So we clarified that. That was the main thing. There was also a question on, you know, probable cause. And so we put examples of probable cause in the bill as well. And so those were really the two things that went into the amendment and passed out. It's headed over to the House.
So do you believe the voters will be confused about the language in this, or is it simple? Is it concise? Is it going to be easy to understand for the choices for the voters?
I think so. I mean, it's really mirroring, as far as the border security, it's just mirroring federal law, which is that you can't cross illegally. You've got to come through a port of, or that you have to come through a port of entry when you come into this country. You can't go by any other means. It's really that simple.
So the criticism we've heard from the opposition is it opens the door to these racial profiling lawsuits. And personally, my problem with that is it all of a sudden says local law enforcement, which I think most of us, 99% of us, respect the jobs they do, that all of a sudden are going to make mistakes and do racist things. Do you believe this in any way is going to open the door to lawsuits?
There's no way you can spin it that it's going to cause racial profiling. If you read the probable cause, you have to, you know, the example is visually seeing somebody, or if somebody admits it, somebody confesses, I crossed illegally. So, no, I don't think so. Will there be lawsuits? You know, whenever there's legislation that liberals don't like, there are lawsuits. So I imagine there'll be lawsuits. As far as from people, you know, against law enforcement or law enforcement implementing this improperly, I don't believe so. I think our law enforcement does a great job, and I think they'll do it. I think they'll do it properly. And again, the biggest issue with SB 1070 was the lawful presence issue. This doesn't have lawful presence in it, and so that's not even going to come into play. That would be the biggest possibility for litigation would be something about lawful presence. We don't have that in here.
Arizona Senate President Warren Petersen is joining us. What about expense? We've heard from people that run the prison system in Arizona that this is going to be very expensive. Some are saying this is going to be an expenditure that's not been accounted for. Is there been concerns about that? Do you believe the prison systems are going to be overwhelmed by this?
Yeah, Mike, right now immigration costs the state over $2 billion a year. So you had somebody come out and say, you know, Katie Hobbs talking head come out and say that it cost a couple $100 million or, you know, a few $100 million to enforce this. Well, I think $2 billion in savings is much better than $300 million. So no, there's going to be a huge savings to the taxpayer.
If this is passed in November, if it gets through the House, and I believe it will, and it gets to the ballot in November and is passed, when does it go into effect? And what do you think the immediate What message will this send even before it's passed to people that are directing traffic into the Tucson sector and to the Arizona border?
Well, it's going to send the message that we enforce the law, and so it'll be a deterrence. It's going to deter these folks. We've seen crossings drop in Texas ever since they've put their law in. At the same time, ours increased, and I'm sure they have. So it'll be a deterrence. It'll definitely send a message that our border is we're going to enforce our laws, and our border is sealed. You've got to come in through a port of entry.
I always appreciate the time and the clarification. I look forward to talking to the House if they pass this. But thank you for your time this morning and the clarification.
My pleasure. Take care, Mike.
All right. That is Senate President Warren Petersen, Arizona State Legislature, talking about HCR 2060.
Thanks for watching The Mike Broomhead Show. Tap to watch the first season of Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast. You can also click the button in the middle to subscribe.